All right. What's up, everybody? We are back again at the AVA Movement Podcast. Today, we are joined by musician and composer Matt Rubano. He's written and recorded on albums totaling over 25 million worldwide. His music has been heard on artists ranging from Taking Back Sunday, All American Rejects, all the way to Mos Def, Lauryn Hill, and of course, our favorite, Angels Airwaves. Matt, thank you so much for joining us. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, same. Thank you.
I think, we'll just start with kind of your background a little bit. I know most of us know a decent amount about you, but for those that don't, what was it that kind of drove that kid from Valley Stream, Long Island to become a musician? Was that always planted early on that you can remember? Some people are like, yeah, I've always wanted to do this. Or was there like kind of some event that like flipped the switch to be like, oh, I can make a career out of this?
No, I did not always know. In fact, I think I was like kind of a pretty like spacey, unfocused kid until I, had discovered music and specifically the bass because I obviously had heard music. But yeah, I kind of, it's interesting, like a lot of the things that were like inspiring or significant that led me to music, I probably didn't realize like those things were happening until much later. My my family will tell me all the time that my grandfather was like an exceptional violinist. He died before I was born, but that he was really a great musician. And my nana, his wife, took me to see like La Traviata and like opera and Lincoln Center Jazz Band, and like kind of was like the cultural maven in my family who like exposed me to a lot of stuff. But all through my like adolescence, I wasn't playing music at all until I got in high school. And my best friend at the time was a guitar player, and his younger brother played drums. So, and I wasn't a very good singer. So that, along with like a lot of the music that we were listening to at that time, which all had like smokingly interesting bass players, and like we're talking about like the late, like the very beginning of the 90s, like literally 1990. So we're listening to like unknown bands like the Red Hot Chili Peppers and
Right.
Fishbone and Jane's Addiction and Primus
Sure.
and Fishbone, and like all like those five bass players right there, like, or yeah, are probably the most formative voices for me, that also then led me to like their predecessors, the guys that they were drawing from. So it really was in the beginning, it was just kind of wanting to hang out with my friends. But it very quickly became like a big part of, my identity. And it also, like I said before, like it provided a thing to focus on at a time in my life where I was like, I don't know, I guess I'll just go to college and fucking fart around. Like I didn't have any like clear direction of like what I was gonna do.
Right.
But once that happened, it was, pretty much like all encompassing, and the main thing that I focused on from that point forward. A lot of catching up to do.
Yeah. I mean, that's awesome. Like, I mean, probably helps that you're just naturally pretty good at it too, to be like, this is a hobby and turn it into a
Back
career.
then, I wasn't.
Yeah. A lot of practice, I'm sure.
You kind of like, you kind of like, you can kind of like contrive your own aptitude at something if you do it enough.
Sure.
For the most part. Although, I guess there's a lot of people out there who practice like crazy or love doing a thing, but they don't get to necessarily do it on like a professional level. So I've always been really like grateful and also like curious, and always like wanting to see what else I could do with music, and not in a sense of accomplishment is not what drives that. It's really curiosity and interest in what I'm doing. You know, it's
Yeah.
I in the very beginning, like when I kind of thought I was going to really do this for my life, I would say that I would ideally like to travel the world and play music with as many different people as I possibly could, specifically like in different genres of music, you know. And I've really been able to do that, and that's kind of the thing that I'm most grateful for. Especially
Yeah.
like, you know, like they're I've been fortunate enough to like, as a bass player, you're always backing people, right? You're always
Mhm.
like behind them, right? But the kick for me has always been playing with like really good and iconic kind of singers. Um, you know, I've played with a lot of people. I played with some people that I like grew up listening to. You know, like I remember listening to the Pretenders as a kid in my parents' car, and then got to do some gigs with Chrissy Hind. Same thing with like Gloria Gaynor. You just grow up knowing Gloria Gaynor
Yeah.
songs. Like "I Will Survive" is like it's American culture. It's just in the culture. And then I got to play on a record with her, and it goes on and on. You know, with like Lauryn Hill and leading all the way up to, you know, people like Kelly Clarkson and Winona Judd and Tom. You know, Tom
Yeah.
being like, we're, you know, we go way back and everything, but it is a trip sometimes to play in a band with him. And like, you know, that voice is really the sound of an entire genre of music, like
For sure.
literally hundreds and probably thousands of bands got there, that spark to start
Yep.
because of that. So yeah, I've been all over the map with it, but um, I really enjoy kind of like wearing a lot of different hats, so to
For
speak.
sure. Yeah. Sure. Makes it fun and interesting. Keep it different.
Yeah,
So not necessarily in like chronological order with your career and everything, but I guess since we are the AVA movement, we can kind of dive into the Angels phase of your life a little bit
yeah,
on the life forms era.
yeah.
Um, so how did I think you knew Tom prior, but like how did that connection come to be to where, you know, someone reaches out to be like, hey, do you want to join Angels?
Yeah. Um, so yeah, I mean, the beginning of me like personally knowing Tom started with Taking Back Sunday, where when I joined Taking Back Sunday, we ended up doing like several tours opening for Blink.
Hmm.
Um, I think I don't remember how many to be honest, or like how like what runs we did with them, but I found myself opening for Blink like a few different times.
Yeah.
You know, with TBS, with the Rejects, I think when I was playing with
Yeah. I
All
think
American
I
Rejects,
was at a couple of those, I'm sure.
yeah. It kind of like not, you know, not in a way because it's not, you know, significant, but it kind of blurs together where I'm like,
Sure.
but I said on another podcast once that I think if you made a pie chart of my touring life, that like a pretty big slice of it would be opening for Blink. Like we, you know, with a couple of different, maybe even Patrick did some Blink shows, Patrick Stump, we
Yeah.
might have done a Blink show. Um, but like, it was super you know, it was always like a really fun time. At first we were kind of like, you know, in awe, and it was always like a very hospitable, fun, chill kind of environment, and we got to hang out a bunch, and it kind of like started there. And then I guess 2018 or so, or 19, somewhere in there, um, I got a phone call asking if I wanted to have a chat with Tom. And I think I was on a tour like playing in an orchestra at the
Hmm.
time, and um, I was in South Carolina, and I remember getting home from a gig, and I got on the phone with Tom, and I think we talked for like 2 or 3 hours about
Wow.
like everything from aliens to music. And I think we probably talked a little bit more about that. At that moment, he was very excited about some stuff that had just happened
For
and was
sure.
like catching me up on it. And then we started talking about music. And yeah, I mean, I also by way of like Warped Tour and stuff, like I've known David for a long time. Um, he's always been one of my favorite people, and I had like crossed paths with Elon a bunch in the Taking Back Sunday years as well when he was playing with different bands, but we
Hmm.
never really like connected.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of the, it's a really like thorough thing too, where like I don't know that maybe this is. I was like, people aren't going to care about this, but like maybe these people will care about this.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
like the Angels crew and band is like a very organic thing.
Yeah.
There's not like there's not like an ad that goes up somewhere that's like wanted guitar tech. It's like it's people that everyone knows.
You're from San
And
Diego? Come on in. Like,
yeah,
I feel
yeah,
like
and
everyone's
like
kind of in that area.
yeah, that there's that, but it's also like the first Angels run that I did, I knew, including like, you know, like I know most of the people in the Angels camp for like 20 plus years.
Mm.
And I'm talking like techs and
Yeah.
tour manager, like we all go back to the time where like I was probably in my like mid early 20s and we all met as like dipshit punk
Yeah.
idiots on
Yeah.
Warped Tour, and we were
Right.
all just like woohoo, and then 20 years goes by, and so it was like I've been on a lot of touring
Yeah.
companies, been in a
Yeah.
lot of bands, and that's one of my favorite crew. Like by crew, I mean the whole thing, like
Hmm.
of people to get up with. It's just like it's like a bunch of brothers
Hmm.
that are all breaking each other's chops the whole time, and yeah, it's like a delightful thing. So when the call came in, I've always loved hanging out with Tom. I've always dug the music. Um, David is like I said, he's one of my favorite people, and at that point, the chance to play with to be in a band with Ilan and play like as a bass player,
Hmm.
I'm always on the lookout for like an opportunity to rip with like a dope drummer,
Yeah.
um, and it just doesn't get really better
No.
than that. So for me, I was like, yeah, let's go. And I also kind of at the time was like looking to move to California, so I was like, this is a good reason to move to
Yeah. Right.
California. And I still am.
Yeah, that's funny. You like mentioned a lot of the stuff I had down, like questions that I think it's very like obvious to the fan group, and like you said, like to this group, this audience on the podcast, like you really notice that that crew is very tight knit, and like even the texts are super. Everyone's like super friendly, super like connectable with with like fans and everything too. And I'd imagine that's like not super common across the board. I mean, there's probably like variations of it, but it just
Yeah,
always felt like the Angels family was like pretty tight knit and like, like you said, kind of a bunch of brothers just goofing around, trying to have fun, but also like making great music. So
yeah.
that's funny
I
that
think
you
I
mentioned
think
that as
people
well.
try to build. I think everyone. There are a lot. I'm not. There are a lot of great like touring camps out there, and I
Sure.
think everybody tries to build that. Like everyone's like, oh, we're a family, and like that sounds nice, but then like you can see the ones where they're like, we're a family, and someone in the back is like, bitch, we're not a
Yeah.
family.
Yeah.
I haven't got a raise in 6 years or
Yeah.
something. But like, um, I've definitely, you know, it's show business, right? So there's all kinds of show business shit
Sure.
going on.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there are artists that I've toured with where the artist won't talk to you, or the crew is like always being reminded that they're just the crew. I don't know. Like there's all
Yeah.
kinds of weird
Yeah. Kind of
vibes
know your
in that.
place a little bit. But
Yeah. And that's like, I, I think, like I said, like I've had a lot of really great touring families over the years, and a lot of some different ones stick out for different reasons.
mhm.
And the Angels thing always stuck out to me as like kind of like a super fine bottle of wine or something, where like all the bullshit of being like a young man or a young person in a rock band, and like your ego and your chip on your shoulder and competition with other bands, and all the stuff that, like, maybe people don't talk about a lot, but is very much happening all the time. Like, Angels was like all dudes who were so chill and like kind of didn't have like it's a creative endeavor. It's not something like where we have something to prove and we need to kill other
Yeah.
bands or
You
anything like
crank
that.
out albums and,
Yeah. No, it's
yeah.
a really unique situation. And um, that was like one of the things that kind of appealed to me because, you know, when you're creating in those kinds of with those kinds of constraints, like out of mind, it's so much more fun. And and it is a band where like there's a clear leader. Most
Right.
of the bullshit in bands is about people not knowing their role or people not accepting their role or constantly wanting to like be the guy who's doing the thing that you're not cut
Right.
out to fucking do at all. And the band has like a feeling of like peacefulness to it,
Yeah.
and it being settled in that like everybody's there to do their thing, and there's it's I mean, don't get me wrong, I've pitched bass solos, but
Yeah.
just not happening.
Well, that's kind of a good segue. I was going to ask, like, about the recording of life forms. I've had Aaron Rubin on this podcast, so
Hmm.
I kind of know like the majority of that. It sounded
Yeah.
like was kind of him and Tom. Like they come to you guys with a fairly polished product, but is that the case, or were there any? Because I feel like I'd seen a few photos of you like recording or in the studio for a little bit,
Yeah.
where everyone like finally came together. Yeah, what was that process like?
Well, the thing to keep in mind there is additionally is like it was in the middle of COVID,
Yeah,
so
that's true.
I don't think everybody has nobody has like a rad 2020 story. Like 2020 sucked. 2020 was so cool.
Yeah,
Um,
best year
it
ever.
wasn't at all. And the year that we had set up before that happened was like so sweet, and just like being gone for like being on the road for like most of the year.
Hmm.
We were going to be doing like a bunch of different things overseas. They were supposed to do some stuff with the Peppers, like, which would have been for me
Mm,
just like real full circle kind of thing. And yeah, so obviously when COVID hit and the world shut down, we had sort of like we were like maybe like throwing recordings around to one another. But like I think logistically, a lot of like what we had to deal with what was going on at the time made the making of that record the way that it was. But
sure.
like, yeah, like I was saying before, like I basically govern the bass department. So like when songs are coming together, like I've got free reign to, create my parts and stuff like that. But the song is for the most part like already pretty together at that point. Um, and that's like, I don't, I think I've like pitched demos of songs to Tom before, but he knows what an Angels song should be,
Yeah,
and what he wants it to be. And like I definitely like it's one of the things that makes it really fun and funny is like I come from a world musically of like I walk in a lot of different worlds or
yeah,
whatever, but like yeah, I don't know that I feel like I can adjust and acquiesce to a writing situation or a producing situation, but you know he's been doing it for a long time and knows what
yeah.
he likes, and it's just as satisfying to kind of like play in that context as it would be to be like writing songs. Like I don't know that it's like a comfortable or like um what's the word? I don't know that it feels as natural to him to like sing on a song he did that is not
I
his
gotcha.
tune. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Not everybody has that kind of like, yeah, whatever, I'll do whatever thing.
Hmm.
And like I said, I've worked with a lot of different artists that have really different processes. Um, so, you know, getting to play on the record was super fun, and also like I feel like I got to put my stamp on it in places where I could. And but yeah, I mean, I think the day I went to record, it was like me, Jeff, and Aaron, and that was it. Maybe
Yeah.
Justin was there,
Mhm.
but yeah, you know, I brought like three basses. It's not like I was in there with my whole
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
world of shit behind me. I was
Yeah.
just kind of like, and it's crazy. The one thing I remember about that record was I brought a 1972 jazz bass, which is like my favorite bass, um, a 68p bass, a Federa, which is like a fucking Ferrari,
Yeah.
and like a $700 Mexican handmade, a Mexican Fender bass that was like
Fun.
$700, right?
Yeah.
And I think I played that bass on the whole album because it just kind of sounded,
Fit the vibe.
yeah, it was like kind of the right, I don't want to say shitty, but it was like the right kind of shitty where it was
Yeah.
like, and the way we were like running it through the amp chain and like effect chain that we were like running it through, it just kind of won, which is really weird when you're like, oh cool, so I brought, you know, $40,000 worth of bass guitars, and we're going to use the
Yeah.
one that I could literally chop up and use for Tinder if I needed to.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
remember Aaron had mentioned at some point, you said like it was they were kind of going for like a garagey, kind of raspy feel. So I
yeah,
think that probably lines up with
yeah,
what you're saying.
yep,
I was surprised to hear that. I think Aaron also mentioned that Tom wrote the bass line for "Losing My Mind," which is kind of
yeah,
a groovy. I wouldn't expect that to come from his mind.
yeah.
Do you have like a favorite AVA song that Angel song that you play live, or are there some that like you really look forward to jamming out on?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think the like I didn't really like delineate between like the line like all of the lines on there to me were fun to play. And
Yeah,
like the other crazy thing is like before you know it, you know, like when you're kind of like making a record and then out on the road and start playing, like it's just like things start to like morph a tiny bit or you get to put your own little spin on it. But like no, to me that does work with the brain of Tom, because it's kind of like a like not Depeche Mode, like yeah, maybe it's like kind of like a
yeah,
Depeche Mode ish kind of thing. um and like that's kind of like what's interesting to me about like when people are inspired by something and they want to create something that like, you know, that they don't have, but they don't have like maybe like schooling or training to be like, oh, here's how I do this. Like I
mhm.
think it's like a very punk thing to be like this, you know, SoCal punk, he's not a kid anymore, but SoCal punk guy
Yeah, yeah,
who's like who gets interested in this other kind of music and then does his take on it.
right.
So like something like Losing My Mind, like it does resonate to me, the same way like Automatic does, you know,
Mhm.
like I know where he's pulling that from.
Sure.
Um, so those are, yeah, and those are two songs like the favorite song to play thing like changes every night because like and I don't know why. I don't have like a good reason for why that
Yeah,
happens. Like sometimes it is the bass line is like real fun to play. Sometimes it's like a subtlety thing about like the way Ilan and I are playing something together. Sometimes it's just kind of you can feel the whole band kind of coalesce on something. So
sure.
um, and I'm it's not even like I'm partial to life forms. It's not like I'm like those aren't I wouldn't just pick from that, but like
Yeah,
I
right.
think by the end of the last tour that we did, I remember having a lot of fun playing Automatic.
Mm.
um let's see. Yeah, man, I think Euphoria too. Like there's a lot of really
Yeah,
really
that's a
fun
good one.
tunes on that. um So yeah, it is one of those things where it changes every night, because I think
Mhm.
sometimes you go out with like a set list, and occasionally we'd be like doing the same show for a couple of days or sometimes a whole couple of weeks. And like when you change it up I personally prefer, like, I know why artists do well rehearsed 70-minute shows for
Sure.
a whole tour, because
Same
it's like,
thing every time.
yeah, and you got a lighting director, and you got, you know, all this stuff going on where like you have to consider the whole show, and it is challenging to do a different show every night. Um, it I think maybe fans can be a little reductive about that and be like, oh, it's the same, and it's like you don't fully understand what would go into a
Yeah.
daily change, right?
I
So it's
think most people
difficult.
aren't like catching 8, 9 shows a tour anyway. So like for
Yeah,
you, it's for the average person in the
right.
crowd, it's different.
That's the
They
idea.
haven't
The
seen it
idea is
yet.
please the 99%.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, but yeah, so it kind of
Cool.
it's a moving target.
Yeah, so we'll transition a little bit, and I did want to touch on Taking Back Sunday, just because, again, like you talk about like kind of iconic scenes and stuff. Like I feel like Taking Back Sunday had such a stranglehold on kind of that emo scene. I know looks like you were there from like 2004 to 2010. Um, and the main albums were Where We Want to Be and Louder Now, which honestly are, without, I'm not just saying this, are like my two favorite albums of theirs. Not
Cool.
saying it because you're on the phone, but like
Right.
even when those first came out, those are always my favorites. So how did that connection happen? Because I know that they had their first album out prior,
Mhm.
and then you kind of came in for the next few there, right?
Yeah. So yeah, so earlier when I was talking about my friend that played guitar and his brother that played drums, that's Mark from who
Oh
was
yeah.
in Taking Back Sunday. And so we like kind of fucked around a little bit as kids, but Mark was also like a good deal younger than his brother Dave and I. Um, and we just kind of like parted ways. Like by the time David and I were in high school, playing, having like a drummer that was like 11 or 10 or however
Yeah.
old he was, like wasn't going to fly. And we had started band with guys our own age. And then before long, I was already at music school and then living in New York City, and kind of um, really had like lost touch with Mark. And then in 2002, I think it was, he called me, and because our moms, like, I think they were looking for a bass player when John and Sean had quit, and I think like our moms put it together that like, oh, Matt plays bass, doesn't he? And like,
Funny.
but I had no idea. I didn't have that's not the scene that I was involved in at all
Hmm.
at that point. I mean, I was living in Brooklyn and playing a lot of like instrumental music and jazz and indie rock kind of stuff. So I didn't really have my ear to the ground on the Warped Tour scene at that point, let alone the emo thing that was starting to like bubble up
Hmm.
all over the country. Um, so yeah, he reached out to me and he was like, "Hey, my band's looking for a bass player," and I remember going to like Tower Records and buying "Tell All Your Friends," um, and honest first reaction was like, "Ugh." I
Not my
wasn't
jam.
not like oh, this is bad, but like, oh, this isn't what I do at
Yeah.
all. And like, I definitely could feel like the frenetic energy of the record, but I wasn't like it was like way out of my, I guess, comfort zone at that point.
Hmm.
And we still ended up getting together and playing. Um, and they had already had Fred join the band at that point. And we played for a little bit, and then it kind of took a little while afterward before I agreed to do it. Um, and the thing that really sold me on it was the first we did a show in New Jersey, um, at a place called the Birch Hill, I think it was called. and it was my first time like meeting the fans, like seeing the
Mm.
fan base and seeing what a Taking Back Sunday show was at that time. Um, and it was like, you know, it was like a battle scene from Gladiator, uh, with everybody screaming and singing every word of every song, which was like a thing that I had not seen um, at anything other than like big iconic bands. And I was kind of like, whoa,
Yeah.
holy shit. And
Okay.
then also like
Okay.
what the on stage kind of performance energy was, which was just like take no prisoners,
Right.
you know, let it really off the chain. And at that point I was really sold on doing it, and they were looking for people to write music. Um, so there was like an opportunity there to really um, you know, get involved in creating the next record. And as far as like bass playing and songwriting goes, I was like given a you know a good amount of space to pitch ideas and do things, and you know, which is clearly evidenced between the difference in the sound of the first and the second record.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, and then I think shortly after that, in 2003 or two or whatever, we think we did a couple of dates on Warp Tour to
Mm.
like sort of announce that the band was continuing on at that point, and then we did like oh no, we did a tour like opening for Saves the Day, I think,
Mm.
and then after that, I think we went out on the Blink tour like shortly after, and then
Yeah.
started making Where You Want to Be over the course of that next year, or like in between tours and stuff. Um, so yeah, pretty soon after I joined the band, I remember starting to like, you know, we would like hang out with Mark and Tom if we were like out here on tour, and they were always doing like kind of fun, like, you know, with Atticus and Macbeth and stuff. They were always
Hmm.
doing like fun like events and hangs and stuff, and it really was this like extended crew of people that flowed from kind of the overlap between like Blink and Warp Tour and the emo scene at large, but it was like the melding of like the bands that were already doing it,
Yeah.
or were like older, I guess, which is weird because somehow we're all still the same. We're all still the same age,
Yeah.
but like, and the bands that were coming up at that time, like your you know, Taking Back Sunday and My Chemical Romance and Fall Out Boy and Yellow Card, and like that was kind of like the, you know, everybody like associates themselves with like whoever they rewrite it however they want, but like that's what at that time felt like the bands that were like,
Sure.
that's who our peers seemed to be.
Yeah.
But I didn't really fucking know anybody. Everyone was new to me.
You're the new guy. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's oddly enough my Spotify playlists are basically all the bands you listed off. So I think
Yeah.
even today is like a lot of us just kind of listen to the same thing.
Yep.
Um, so I, it's kind of a funny question, but like, so I feel like in that time, like in that scene, there's pretty like epic song names that would come out, especially like even you guys, like Take It Back
Yeah.
Sunday. Fall Out Boy was always like notorious for their song names. I'm a Timberwolves fan, so even like Timberwolves at
Right.
New Jersey is always one of my favorite. Ghost Runner
Uh-huh.
on Third is pretty hilarious.
Yeah.
What what goes into like creating a great email song title? Like, did you have your hand in any
I mean,
of them, or is that all?
yeah. On the records that I played on, I think we would pitch like a lot of times with TBS, what I can remember on on Where You Want to Be, it was definitely like a pitch meeting, like a writer's
Yeah,
room. And it wasn't always like, it was never formally like, oh, what are we going to call this song? It was
yeah,
like someone would say some dumb shit, and then it would
that's the
be in
title.
practice, and you'd be like, yo, that's what we should call this. Honestly,
Yeah,
dude, like that's how it goes.
funny.
That's how it went so many times. And then some things would be, you know, named because of inspiration, or because of a lyrical idea that was happening in it. But like the songs where you can't find the title of the song in the song,
Yeah,
most often was like it sounded like a good name, or it came up in conversation. um I remember we had a tune We had a song that I don't think got released. Maybe it did, or I don't remember at this point. So long ago. Taking Back Sunday had a song called "Follow the Format,"
Hmm.
and it was the song itself was like a very atypical song shape. Like the form was
Hmm.
unusual, um, and I think we had heard some feedback that was like, "Oh, you shouldn't do that. It's weird." Or it doesn't make sense, or it ends in a weird, whatever it was. Like we were, we wouldn't play anything we weren't like psyched with or delighted
Yeah.
with. You know what I mean? So like when you write a song as a band and you're fucking psyched, especially if you like feel like you're doing something a little different or new for you, and then you get feedback that's like, "Oh no, boys, put it back in the box." You're like, "Nah, fuck that. Like, what do you
Yeah.
want
That
us to
makes
follow
you
the
want to do
format?"
it more.
Yeah, so that's what I mean, I think like that title was about like, like play by the rules, even though we're not doing that here. And Bonus Mosh Part 2 is like literally just the song has two bridges that are both like big open D or B, probably. Yeah, I was playing an open B string on a lot of that song, so that's pretty low. It was just like it. We referred to the second bridge as like the bonus mosh part
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
the song. So like it was stuff like that, and then some of them have like kind of mean, like shitty, critical, petty
Yeah.
significance.
Just
Uh,
some people who know what that means, right? Like if
what is it? It's a I Y K
yeah, if you know,
Y
you
K. That's
know.
so hard
Yeah.
to say if you know, you
Yeah.
know. But like the acronym is impossible to say. That's too many
Yeah.
letters. So yeah, it's like and it was like you said. It's like that whole scene had this like if your song title wasn't at least like a
Yeah.
paragraph of fucking prose, like nobody wanted to
It's like
hear it.
heartbreak never hurt so bad at the farmer's market. And it
Yeah,
like
and
has
like
nothing to do with any of
yeah,
it.
or band now then band names started to get like that.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
like what's that band? Uh, oh, it's Dallon's but it's I don't know how, but they found us. Or
Oh, yeah.
what is it? It's
Um,
there's just like bands started naming themselves like entire paragraphs. And I
yeah.
think that dude, and now like where we're at this very moment, like it's now it's like you're listening to
Yeah.
CEIIXV5 and you're like, I don't know how to say that, and I don't know even who the artist. It's
Yeah.
like it'll all before long we'll just be making sounds again like
This is
cavemen.
colon slash slash forward slash.
And like the same way that my parents thought fishbone sounded silly,
Right. Right.
I'll probably think that stuff sounds silly, but I know better than to like turn my nose up at it
For
because
sure.
that's just like
Yeah.
it literally just me it's like it's a mirror to let you know you're getting older.
Yeah. Yeah. And that kind of actually transitions into this next question. Um, so Mod's son is a younger artist. Well, he's actually like a couple years younger than me, but
Mhm.
he works with Machine Gun Kelly. And
Mhm.
recently, he had said at a tour, they were at Warped Tour. They're headlining this year's Warped Tour. That's kind of like made a comeback, and it's back now. Um, he had said, without that Tickets to My Downfall album, with which Travis Barker produced, there probably is no reemergence of Warped Tour or pop punk. And I know that's a bit of a bold statement, but on that question, like, what do you think makes something that's kind of this multi-generational popularity? Like, there's been a clear reemergence of pop punk. I don't know if that's because like dads and moms are playing it for their kids and they're like, oh, this is rad, we should listen to this. But kind of out of those COVID years, there were kind of these younger, rappers or others who kind of took on the pop punk scene and did
Yeah.
reinvigorate that. Like, I don't know if you thought much about it, but like, I guess in general, like, what do you think separates that from like, you know, 80s synth music that like kind of comes back, but not like as strong as some of the other genres?
Yeah. Well, the truth is everything comes back.
Yeah.
Like and sometimes it's like a revision or like a reinterpretation. And sometimes it's just, you know, the same. Like, um, you can, that's the thing about influence and being a great artist or a unique artist. Great often too often gets conflated with like success. Like if you're a great artist measured by how much capitalism they won is not the same as someone whose art is really unique and means something. It doesn't mean that pop art or pop music doesn't mean something. It just means like, you know, you wouldn't exactly say that like LMFAO are great artists. No one's even gonna know the fuck I'm talking about.
Yeah, I got
Um, yeah,
it.
but they were very popular. So
Sure.
this is where you get into that thing of like, you know, so does that then make their art good? Like, no, it makes it popular. Like something being commodified well, and
Hmm.
something being like significant as a piece of art or creation is different. But it's like you'll never get the pop fans to care about art, and you'll never get artists to care about what's popular. So
Yeah.
like it's kind of like one big pool that we're all in, all saying different stuff. So like I think everything comes back. Like really all that happens is there's like a changing of the guard from time to time.
Yeah.
Like if you trace like guitar based music, rock music, whatever you want to call it, from like the mid 60s until now, like there have been several iterations of a lot of the same kind of stuff with a few real outliers of like, whoa, that's not been done
Mm.
before
Yeah.
necessarily. But like even a band like some people really go to great lengths to prove like, no, this is who influenced them. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
like something like fucking Primus. Like, is there no precedent for Primus? Like, well, there's Rush, but like definitely not the same thing. Like there's three guys there and there's a great bass player and a great drummer and a great guitar player, an unusual guitar player. Like so it's sort of one of these things where I think like and what makes your question really interesting around COVID and like everyone being like handcuffed to the internet and their
Hmm.
phones and TikTok and whatever is like culturally what's happened now is like the window for nostalgia is now like 18 months,
Yeah, that's
you
true.
know, like or maybe or maximum 10 years. Like I thought there would be something after emo that would make it kind of fade away. And bands were doing their like 10-year anniversary of their record tours. And I was like, the fuck is this? Like, you know, you can't, your greatest hits shouldn't,
Yeah. Yeah.
if you declare that you're in the greatest hits era when you're still in your 30s, like, I don't know, maybe you haven't achieved as great as you
Yeah.
can achieve yet. Um, but you know, it seemed like emo went from like being current to kind of like nostalgifying itself, and then yeah, and then it just started becoming the new backdrop for like pop girlies and you know stuff that was borrowing it as like backing tracks for it. It became aesthetic, dude.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I don't think that's bad. I don't think I think that's like if you step back and try not to like be the arbiter of taste, you can see how these things proliferate way more because of business than art.
Yeah.
And like it or not, if you're going to try to survive as any kind of artist ever, you will be spending a good portion of your existence at the crossroads of capitalism and art.
Yeah. It's a great point. Yeah, I think that the way it's consumed is always changing too. Like out of COVID, everyone was kind of streaming, and SoundCloud was huge, and like all that stuff. So a lot of the younger generations, that's how they consume their music. It's not, it's not a physical album obviously anymore, but like if that's what's popular and people on those forums are doing pop punk, then it's going to reach a younger generation too. I'm sure that had a lot to do with it. But
Yeah, it's always interesting to watch any generation hear something as if it's new when it's not. You know, when
yeah,
it's coming from a deeper lineage or like a longer lineage that they're just unaware of. I mean, like there is a whole like it was kind of like when I'm trying to think of what the title of the record was, but like when some of like the Bruno Mars music
uh,
came out, that people were like, "Oh my God, holy shit, this has been like invented by Bruno." And it's like, well, no, he's pulling from stuff
yeah,
that
James
like
Brown.
they're, yeah, I mean, well, there's that, and then also like Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, and like
Yeah,
they're just like, you know, it's not like he's stealing the song. It's not like he's stealing anything. He's like he's making R&B music,
hmm yeah,
and like I think it's what happened to me, man. I heard Fishbone before I ever heard Sly and the Family Stone. You know, I
yeah,
heard Jane's Addiction before I had heard like fucking Black Sabbath or listened to all that much Led Zeppelin, really. And like the
right,
Peppers were how I found out about Thelonious Monk, and like like it went
yeah.
backwards for me when I heard Flea talk about the bass players that he liked. I was like, well, who's Larry Graham and who's Louis
Yeah, check that
Johnson?
out. Yeah,
Yeah, and like so there, and I think that that's brilliant. Like there's like a chain of influence that like try as
mhm.
hard. You have to be a real fucking wackadoo to not be a part of the chain of influence. Like
Yeah,
you consumed something that made you want to do this thing, and try as hard as you might, there is residue of that person on you.
yeah, for
Um,
sure.
I'm sure even Tom would say, even Tom, whose voice is like the voice, right? Like, I'm sure he would say that he was inspired by
Yeah,
a
yeah.
specific person or two.
I think he's gone on the record saying like his voice was inspired by Milo from the Descendants. Like he was always kind of trying to sound like him at the end
Right,
of the day. But yeah,
right.
it's a
But
different
thank,
twist
but
on it.
didn't.
But
Yeah,
he was trying.
yeah, yeah.
um, so you mentioned before, but you also recorded bass on, I mean, honestly, what many consider one of the greatest albums of all time, Miseducation of Lauryn Hill.
Sesame Street. Oh yeah. Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
close second was Sesame Street. Um, I'm just curious because that was like such a huge influence in my family with older sisters, and like we listened to that album just so many times growing up. When
Yeah.
you guys were recording that, or when you were a part of that, did that feel like? Did you know like this is gonna be a massive thing, or was it when it came out? Was everyone like, "Holy crap, that we did not see that coming"?
Yeah. Well, definitely not. Definitely nobody was like sitting there being like, "Wah, we're gonna
Yeah,
do,"
yeah.
but it was, Fuji's were already a huge, act,
Mhm.
and there was already like drama around Wyclef and Lauren, and so like nobody knew that. But I will say that the time that I spent in the studio, like making that record, which was only a handful of sessions, but like some of them were like overnighters and really long. Um, but you could like I still remember walking into the room for the first time and being like, "Oh, some shit's happening in here." There's like a big entourage and lots of people, and um, it was very clear that you know this wasn't they weren't fucking around for sure. And there was also like a real loose freedom to it where like I went from like basically auditioning for her to recording in a few minutes,
Wow.
where they were like, dope, all right, let's go. But it was nerve-wracking because at that, you have to imagine a world where it's
Yeah.
1997
I was gonna
and
say like you're pretty young, right? Like,
there's no social media.
yeah,
So like you don't see famous people anywhere except the
sure.
television or on
TV.
stage. Yeah, right. Like that's it. So, you walk into a room and it was Lauren and there were some other people there that were like pretty big deals to me. And like, I went from, just so like, I don't know if you've heard this story before, but like, I was waiting tables. I was like a waiter in an Italian restaurant, and my
Wow.
friend who was working at the studio called me and he was like, "Yo, get the fuck down here. Lauren will meet you." Because he had been trying to like push her, like he had mentioned like, "Oh, I have a friend who's a good bass player. If you want a bass player for this," and eventually she cracked and was like, "Fine, I'll meet your fucking friend." Um, and so like he called me. I was at work, and he was like, quit your fucking job right now. Quit your job. Come into the studio." And long story short, I did. And so like the whole like energy of that night was very much like, I was like 20 or 19 at that point, 20. And it was like, it's good to be young and stupid, because you'll
Yeah.
like quit your job and drive into the city for the promise of nothing.
Yeah.
Um,
Like, sure.
and
All right. I'm in.
yeah, let's do it. It's a chance to not be doing this right now. Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
So I went in and did it, and it ended up working out. But like, I had no idea what I was doing, really. I mean, I loved playing, and I was like, had done a little bit of time at music school, but I was back in New York trying to survive as like someone that kind of, I think I was living at my dad's then. Um, it was not like I wasn't chilling. I was really trying to figure out what the hell was going on in my life, and it really was one of those things you could never predict or plan for, but it happened and changed things for me. But yeah, it was kind of like I remember doing the record and doing a couple songs on the record, and then I went on tour with another artist, and the record came out while I was on tour.
Mm.
And again, there's no social media, so there's no real time
Yeah.
reactions
It's
to
no
shit.
viral. Like,
No.
no.
But like at the end of the first 2 weeks of the record being out, anytime I called anyone from the road to be like, "Hey, what's up?" They were like, "Yo, your shit is everywhere." And I didn't really have a good feel for what was happening. And when I got back to New York, it was just quite obvious that the record was dominating everything. And then the Grammys that year was like, took home a bunch of them.
Oh,
And
wow.
it was really like it propped me. It actually put me in a place where I was like, oh shit, I'm not this good all the time. Like I really like, and my phone rang a couple of times with people where I was like, oh, I hope I can do this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but it was amazing. And you know it's just like, it's one of those things that like, if you are lucky enough to find yourself with an opportunity like that, like just hope you're ready,
Yeah, it's
you know?
wild.
Yeah.
It's like a movie script. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, like you could make a film
I'm
out of
leaving
that
out a lot of it. I
experience.
mean, I dropped a
Yeah.
bowl of fucking minestrone all over myself, like when I was trying to get out of there. Like I was literally on the phone with my
It's
friend
like
at the window
taking the
of this
apron
rest.
off.
Dude,
Yeah.
I was like taking food out of the window, and like, you know, and I had to explain to my manager, it's like Saturday night, like 9:30, the place is fucking packed. And I was like, I gotta go. And he was like, what do you mean you gotta go? And I was like, I have to go. I have an opportunity a life changing. I think I had said to him, I tried to communicate to him, I was like, it's like a once in a lifetime opportunity. And he was like, I can't promise your job will be here tomorrow if you come back. And I was like, I can live with that.
Like that's
And I
fair.
bounced. Yeah, I washed off all the fucking ravioli and
Nice.
got in the car and blasted into the city.
Nice.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's just wild. That's like just a wild story. So switching gears a little bit again. So looks like you're kind of getting into like improv and some other things now in your career. I see on social media you're doing some of those things. Have you always wanted to be an actor? Is that like something that you've kind of said, like if I wasn't a musician, I might pursue that, or did that just kind of come out of some opportunities? I know you had a big splash in Monsters of California as a barista.
Huge role, huge role.
But
There's a sequel coming out that's going to revolve largely
yeah,
around that
yeah.
character.
There's a spin-off
Yeah.
with the barista coming soon, I'm sure.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Weirdly, his first name is Barista. Um, no,
he was born to do that job.
it's not something that like at one or two times I've like been doing auditions and trying to get representation and all that stuff. But really the whole way I ended up doing any of that is through like just having friends like Tom who knows me, and he was like, yo, I think
Yeah.
you'd be good at this. And then I did another movie that year that similarly, like a guy that I had like kind of become friends with who was a writer director was like, hey, I got this role, I think you should do it. I never really like beat out other actors for stuff. It was
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I very fortunately would get offered an opportunity from someone where I didn't have to, makes it sound lazy, but I didn't have to do very much. But the addition of stuff like that to my life as a musician was discovering, improv in New York, kind of in between Taking Back Sunday tours. I
Hmm.
remember one night some friends of mine were going to the Upright Citizens Brigade to see a show, and they invited me to go along, and I didn't really know what it was.
Hmm.
And I just thought it was, we saw like a real creme de la creme show, and I just thought it was the most fun thing. And I, as a jazz musician or as an improvising musician, like to me, it was the most fascinating thing to see people just like create a world
Yeah.
and also like deal with comedic ideas without any writing on their feet. And it kind of reminds me of like the way musicians like talk shit and act a fool.
Yeah.
Like musicians and comedians, like the overlap is like,
Right.
there's like some saying about all musicians want to be comedians and all comedians want to be rock stars and all rock stars think they're funny.
Yeah.
But like, like I just remember seeing that and really getting bit bad by the bug of like, I want to do that with these people. And like for a few years in New York around when I was playing with Patrick Stump and All American Rejects, like I was very focused on
Hmm.
doing comedy at Upright Citizens Brigade and anywhere that would have me. But it didn't really become like a more codified like vision until I started doing a lot of performing around there. And then, when you're like a performer at a theater like that, they start sending you on auditions
Hmm.
for like
Gotta
commercials and
get
stuff.
plugged in.
Yeah. And like I did a couple of different commercials and stuff back in the day. Um, and, but it was always like, to be really honest, man, it was always all for my own amusement. Like doing improv for a lot of people or doing sketch acting or writing comedy is like a means to an end of trying to become a bigger, doing something as
Yeah.
as an actor, as a director, as a writer. For me, it was a really fun way to spend my time. It's not like I
Yeah.
didn't
Kind of.
want to do all those things, but like it was a very zen kind of like, oh, I'm very happy while I'm doing this. This isn't this isn't hurting anyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like and I got into it, and then when moving out here, there's like just as big, if not bigger, of a community of people doing that sort of
I
stuff
bet.
here in LA as well. So there's kind of like an overlap between the comedy, acting, writing, directing communities where like people are always looking for funny people that can create things out of thin air.
Yeah.
That's like what I mean, commercial auditions are basically like, it's for this, and we wrote this, but we don't care about that. What do you have to say?
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like I've seen things that I've improvised in auditions in a commercial that
Oh.
I didn't book. You know what I mean? Like I'm
You're
like, I
like,
fucking
okay.
said that. I said
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
You know?
Should get some royalties for that.
Yeah, no, sadly none. But yeah, but I do enjoy doing that kind of stuff. But it really is, like I said, I'm not. Uh, I
Yeah.
still, as far as like my career goes, I'm a musician.
It's not like
I'll,
you're up at night being like, oh, why couldn't I have been an actor?
I mean, yeah, I don't think anyone would say no to doing it unless people
Oh, yeah.
that actually don't like being, being kind of put on the spot
Sure.
or don't like that kind of focus. But like, um, yeah, it's just I've always been a person that's interested in performing in lots of
Yeah.
different ways. So, it kind of fits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I also manage the To the Stars Facebook page. So I'd be remiss not to ask. Just you keep it light, but
Yeah.
have what thoughts on like the unknown and extraterrestrials, and I've also heard stories of Tom. You kind of mentioned it on your initial call with him, but especially on tour, he likes to kind of corner people and spit out a bunch of information. Was there a lot of that going on tour, even on the life forms or your Angels
Well,
tours?
yeah, one of the things that I took with me from that experience is like, when we were younger, like backstage was like a little bit of a fun party. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't mean like, not like the dirt, like it's not fucking Motley Crue or anything, but like whiling out and having a good time, and people's like girlfriends around and stuff like that or
Yeah.
whatever. Um Angels tour was like, neuro, like would always be like, it's like an aeronautics guy, and like, oh, this guy used to work at NASA, and this guy's a senator or whatever.
Yeah.
It was always like kind of more, you could feel that Tom's life had shifted focuses a
Oh
little bit,
yeah.
where it was like a little bit more of that kind of thing. um, and I always thought it was really interesting. I mean, it was certainly like, you can only do so much backstage, like of the sort of like, candy kind of thing, where you're just like,
Yeah.
not it's not, there's no substance to it. So it was always a little bit more interesting to find out that he was like connecting with all these different kinds of people, or different people that were like working for him, or to the stars or whatever. Honestly, man, we'd need to have like an entire other call to properly open this topic. But not even just from being around Tom, like I'm just not someone, I'm like a little bit of a skeptic, a little bit of a stoic, and a little bit of like, I'm smart enough to know that I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I
Yeah.
don't get any pleasure out of like
That's fair.
decreeing that I know something is a certain
Sure.
way. Especially in today's world, where while it's really nice to look up at the stars and ponder, um, what's going on down here is fucked. Uh,
That
we've
we know. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't mean, to like politically, even though
Sure.
that's
Yeah.
exactly what I mean, but like our race of biped, supposedly possessing the ability to reason. What's been done now is like, we've destroyed the concept of truth.
Yeah.
Now
For sure.
truth is really subjective, and it depends who told you the truth, where
Mhm.
you saw it, and if it's still there when you go back to cite your source. So we're living in this really fucked up time where like, we're not all having the same experience. We can't all afford to have the same experience.
Yeah.
um, and there are like tremendous problems that are going to be ignored by the ruling elite, just to keep the show moving along as
For sure.
usual. And I think leaving the door open for things like the existence of ETs and UFOs and all of this stuff, and that the world may not be just this experience that we see from day to day, that we take for granted at face value. I think like those things are, there are more unknowns than knowns, and
Sure.
it should probably always be like that. Um, so yeah, I was kind of blown away to see what a crazy central role some of Tom's work was playing in that,
Yeah.
when
Right.
things started to like kind of come out. But yeah, my mind and my eyes are open for all things in that realm. I hope
Okay.
I'm around when some tremendous discoveries come out.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
um. So last question here, and at the risk of being a little cliche, but as long as we have someone that's kind of seen a lot, played a lot with
Yeah.
different folks, what is some of that advice? I know you kind of teach bass as well. I don't know if you
Yeah.
mention this stuff with your students much, but like, what kind of advice would you give personally to either like bands or musicians kind of trying to come up in today's landscape?
Man, I don't know. Uh, I think that to answer the question responsibly, um, I came up in a totally different time, and I don't even know if what, like I've had musicians, specifically bass players, ask me like, I want to do what you do or did. How do I do that? And it's like, I don't have an answer for you. Be lucky and like be prepared when luck shows up by like working hard and be cool. Make sure you know why you're doing this. Be a good collaborate. Either be fucking brilliant and a super genius that people want to do your art with you, or be a good collaborator so you can work with lots of different people. Career advice is different than creative advice.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think like uh, these days, the show business is it's wild.
Yeah.
Talent and long before I got into it, like talent stopped being the bar for entry, the barrier for entry, and then it became you could be sexy or you could be popular or you could be fucking crazy, and like it's all good, really. I mean, I
Yeah, be
think
marketable.
yeah, yeah. But I think if you're asking specifically for like a musician or from a musician standpoint, like be open-minded, know your craft, um, and yeah, I think that's really what
Yeah.
it's about. Like but I'm a weird one. I'm a speckled egg in that like I kind
Yeah.
of I went at this being like, oh, salsa, reggae, punk rock, like I'm a lot of
Well,
people identify very much with a thing and it's part of their identity. I'm a little bit of a
yeah.
schizophrenic in that way.
Well, I think that's probably been a real positive for you too, to have that
Yeah.
flexibility and kind of be able to pivot. So
Oh, I've been lucky, man. I dig it.
yeah. Well, hey man, again, thank you so much. I know like this is taking time out of your day and all that. So I
My
think
pleasure.
people are going to be super stoked to hear from you, and best of luck in everything that's coming up. And I'm sure we'll hear from you down the road, and we'll keep an eye out for everything you got going on. But
Cheers.
thanks again,
Thanks, man.
Matt. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, good talking to you.
All right.